Good morning, San Diego. Welcome into the Braden Surprenant Show, live and local each and every Sunday morning. We don't have holidays and everything else going on. I will be taking you up to the end of the year each and every Sunday from 8 to 10, I think with the exception of maybe the Thanksgiving and Christmas breaks and last week of the year. So a couple more Sundays left of this for the 2024 calendar year before we start talking about 2025. Still got a lot longer way to go before that. But thanks again for all of you guys and joining us every Sunday morning since this show started back in January to talk Padres baseball, to talk some college football, some NFL. And when we talk about today and getting started with today, we got a lot to recap on the sports weekend. Had a couple of fights over the weekend with that sham of a boxing match between Mike Tyson and Jake Paul. That was on Friday. That seemed like a mess. I was preoccupied with high school football and coaching high school football that I did not watch the fight. I heard Netflix went down, which is interesting, especially since they're supposed to be airing a NFL game on Christmas. I mean, if it went down for the Jake Paul-Mike Tyson fight, that might be going down for the Christmas game as well. And hopefully they fix that problem before before we get to Christmas and we have a major issue for a lot of people on Christmas morning or Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. I can't remember what the game is. But I know Netflix is airing an NFL game. So I know that was a talking point for a lot of people going into the weekend. Watched a lot of college football yesterday. Broadcasted a college football game yesterday as the USD Toreros won on senior day. They hammered Stetson. Stetson's not very good. USD probably now kicking themselves for a loss at St. Thomas, and more specifically that 3-point loss, or really 2-point loss, but the game-winning field goal L to Drake earlier in the year, because after Drake lost yesterday in the Pioneer League, San Diego had a good chance at potentially winning the conference. They're one game back of Drake. They probably need a tiebreaker to make it worth their while, but they don't win the tiebreaker over Drake. Morehead State beat them yesterday, beat Drake yesterday, whose University of San Diego will play next weekend, but I don't know if they have any shot at potentially winning the conference. But they had a really good year, and they capped that off with a big win at against Stetson yesterday. So that's what I was doing yesterday, and then I went and watched some college football with my buddy, who is a Washington State alum. We went to the Washington State alumni watch party, which, if you are a Washington State alumni, the Cougs usually take over SD Tap Room down in PB. So was able to watch the game there, went to Tavern a little bit and watched some other college football games. And then we bailed out of PB right as the fights were going. John Bones Jones got a victory last night, arguably one of the best fighters in the UFC of all time. But obviously a lot of tarnishes on his resume with some PED use and everything like that in his past, and not as popular. I mean, he's a popular fighter, but probably could have been even more popular if he was in a popular weight class. But John Bones Jones got a victory, and we had lots to talk about when it comes to sports over the weekend. Aztec football, I mean, they looked pretty much like you would expect them to look against a very good UNLV team yesterday. And I have my concerns about the Aztecs football program, which we'll talk about in the next segment. And a lot of the problems that you have with the Aztecs football program really has nothing to do with the X's and O's in the field or the coaching staff. It's kind of a product of the landscape of college football, which is really what I want to start talking about in this first segment. And we'll get to Padres in a little bit. We'll talk about them at the end of the hour. In the bottom of the hour, we'll talk Padres baseball, what their plan is. I mean, I get asked that question all the time. What do you think the Padres are going to do? Well, I don't know. It highly depends on if they're going to stay underneath the luxury tax, or are they going to go over the luxury tax? If they're going over the luxury tax, how much are they willing to spend over the luxury tax? Those are a lot of decisions that have obviously been made behind the scenes that we will slowly start to figure out ourselves based on the moves that they make coming up this offseason. And what has been a very quiet, very cold stove for Major League Baseball. I mean, we haven't had a lot of good moves at all. I want to say good moves. We haven't seen a lot of big moves at all. And it doesn't even have to be massive moves. I mean, the only one really making any type of signings or trades are the Los Angeles Angels. And the Angels are acting like it's 2015 with some of the moves that they've been making. And other than that, and a re-signing for the Royals of Michael Wacha, nobody's done anything. And I wonder if they're waiting for the winter meetings coming up in December, which will happen in Texas. And maybe that will start putting the puzzle together for the San Diego Padres. But until we kind of get a sense, and they will never tell us, you'll just have to, their actions will speak louder than their words. You're never going to really know what the plan is. But right now, the Padres are over, give or take, a couple of million. Again, according to Fangraphs, they are currently over the luxury tax for next year. The luxury tax threshold is $241 million. Their projected payroll, that is a luxury tax number, is at $243 million. So they would have to cut $2 million if they want to stay underneath that threshold. But I don't necessarily know that's the case. Again, going over that threshold if you're the Padres, after resetting it, is not a costly figure for them as it would have been if they were over last year. Again, there only would be a 20% tax on just the overages. So $1 million over, you're only paying $200,000 in luxury tax payments. I mean, the most you could pay before you get to the next level is like $5 million in luxury tax payments. I mean, what's an extra $5 million if you're the Padres and you're already spending it would be $260 million, $259 or whatever it is. And those are at the end of the season. So you do want to give yourself a little bit of wiggle room to be able to add pieces at the deadline, just like they did last year. That's why they had to make a deal with the Marlins and have them pay for most of Luis Arraez's contract for last season. That doesn't happen in this season. They're going to have to pay for him whatever his arbitration numbers are. But that being said, the Padres you're not going to know what they're going to do or what they're interested in doing or what they could potentially do until you kind of understand, are they going to be over the luxury tax threshold? Or are they not? That's a big part of this entire equation. Are they going to be above the luxury tax threshold, or do they not want to do that? So until that question gets answered, it's really difficult to kind of predict, well, who are they in on? You know, the Padres need pitching, but like if they want to stay underneath the luxury tax, they can't afford to go get a Corbin Burns or a Blake Snell or anything like that. They really would have to start thinking about finding trade value on that current team. Do you flip a Luis Arraez? Do you flip a Dylan Cease? Do you try to re-sign Arraez to a longer deal that lowers his AAV? His average annual value that is added to the tax. Instead of paying him maybe the $14 million you have to owe him in arbitration, which we don't know about that number yet. And the Padres have usually done, at least with A.J. Preller in charge, a good job of putting those contracts out. And so not having to go to arbitration, which really pisses off a lot of athletes, especially the ones that decide to sit in on the arbitration hearings, a.k.a. Milwaukee Brewers players. So that will be a very interesting thing for the Padres. We'll talk more about that in the bottom of the hour. I do want to get your phone calls today, 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. But I want to talk about the state of college football. I think college football right now is just absolute carnage. They had put, and the way the conference realignment has happened with NIL and with the transfer portal, you're starting to see a little bit of a balance, and you're starting to get some parity in college football. You're starting to get, you're not going to have that dominant team and those four dominant teams that nobody can touch anymore. that just load up on all the players in recruiting and keep them all there for 4 or 5 years and have these loaded teams. You're not going to see that anymore in college athletics because other schools are going to be able to pay money to get what would be a 2 at Georgia in the past, who's good enough to start in any other SEC school. These schools are going to be able to pay those guys to be starters and pay them just as much as the Georgia starters. And so it's going to spread the love. And the same thing with the transfer portal. You have an opportunity now to break free from, maybe getting buried on a depth chart and finding an opportunity to play at a different league, right? In a different conference, one that might be a little bit tiered lower than an SEC or a Big Ten school. It spreads the love to the Big 12 and the ACC. And then that again down to the Mountain West. And it's starting to slowly balance out in terms of the competition level, which I love to see. We're still not totally there yet. The big schools are still getting the benefit of the doubt, and I understand why. I mean, all the big TV companies that pay for this. I mean, college football and basketball is strictly funded by television. Television has made this a gigantic industry because people are passionate about their schools that they either attended or, even better yet, and this is the biggest thing that really works out for college athletics, is college athletics and all these like major schools, the ones in the SEC and the Big Ten, more specifically. They're not always the best schools, but they have the biggest fan bases. They're in remote locations that don't have professional sports, so all the locals really back the school, and then all the people from the major cities end up going there for college and end up being diehard fans too. It's why college football is so much fun and has so much passion. It's different than the corporate National Football League that is all about corporate dollars. College football is kind of getting there a little bit, but at the same time, you have schools in if the University of Tennessee was not in Knoxville, I don't know why anybody would live in Knoxville. I have been to Knoxville multiple times. My brother was a graduate of the University of Tennessee. I don't know what you do in that town aside from go to a bar that Morgan Wallen wrote about from growing up just outside of Knoxville at Cool Beans, or going to a Tennessee sporting event. What would you do in Knoxville? I went to the University of Arizona for my first semester of college. If the University of Arizona wasn't in Tucson, I don't know why anybody would ever visit Tucson. Got a couple of nice areas in Tucson in the mountains. They got good golf, nice little spas and everything. But what do you do in Tucson? It's nothing. I was there. They don't do anything in Tucson. You go to Arizona Wildcat athletic events. That's what you go to. I mean, we're talking about cities like Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and Morgantown, West Virginia. We're talking about College Station, Texas. College Park, Pennsylvania. I mean, these are places that people have no business going to. So it's made these gigantic fan bases in the area, in the states, with all the people from the cities going there for college, with the local people that live in those towns, using those colleges as their pro team because they don't have any others. It's made this gigantic viewership and has made television so much money, and television pumps the most money into the conferences that have the most college towns a part of it. And there are some schools that are grandfathered in on this, but there's a big reason why the schools that are doing the most damage are in the South, which doesn't have a lot of professional sports teams, and in the Midwest, where everybody's passionate about their local universities. If you come out to the West Coast, why do you think the Pac-12 died? There's multiple reasons. Larry Scott is a major reason, but there are multiple reasons why the Pac-12 is dead. The environments out here are not nearly the same. Why? Because there's so much out here to do. When USC was the number one team in the country and they were, illegally recruiting, people in LA would be interested. It was in a major city, and they didn't have pro football at the time. If you look at some of the Pac-12 schools, the only ones that really went after it were the ones that were in remote locations, like Pullman. Washington State. I mean, the Washington State fan base is great. They might be one of the most diehard fan bases in all of college athletics. But with the size of the school and being in Pullman, it's just not as big as some of the other schools back east. But the other part is they weren't on TV in the 70s kicking ass like Notre Dame was in some of the schools in the Midwest. Playing at bad TV times if they ever got on TV. But you look at like the University of Washington, yeah, I mean, they're good, but like at the same time, they're in Seattle. You know, Oregon's an anomaly because they have Nike money. And so they can pay all this ludicrous amounts of money, and they use the marketing of the jerseys and everything like that to try to create this national fan base. But start looking at some of the West Coast schools. I mean, we could talk about San Diego State football all we want, and they could be good. In years that they're good, people still kind of struggle to show up. They've had crowds in the past, right, with Marshall Faulk and, you know, different areas of Aztec football, the Don Coryell, Eric Coryell era. They're lighting up a scoreboard, Marshall Faulk running all over the place. I mean, some of those, right, could get people in the stands. But when you're talking about West Coast football, it's completely different than what it's like in the Midwest and in the SEC and the environments. And you wonder why a lot of the kids that are here in Southern California want to go to SEC schools. One, it's money, but two, at the same time, the environments are so insane. Kirby Smart said that last night. Kirby Smart said, I'd like to see the committee come down here and watch what this environment is about because it's hard to win here. Obviously, talking about Georgia being left out last week in the rankings, they'll be probably in it at this point after beating Tennessee last night. I've been to Athens, Georgia on game day. I've seen them play Tennessee. That place gets rowdy. It is a hard environment to play in, but if you're a recruit, you go there and be like, why would I ever go to a school on the West Coast when I can go to the South? If I have the offer, if I'm good enough to play and I have those SEC offers, why would I ever play at the University of Southern California or UCLA? I mean, look at UCLA. UCLA used to be a powerhouse in a lot of sports. Look at the environment they have at the Rose Bowl. And I know they're not very good, but they're a lot better than lousy. All right? They're a decent football team. I mean, even when they're good right now, they cannot come close to filling the Rose Bowl. I mean, they can't get students to go to the game. I know it's further away. They have their own problems. But if you're a recruit in Southern California, you come from a Trinity League school, or if you come from if you come from a San Diego school, I mean, I see it with kids that I coach. Got an offer from a Pac-12 or a former Pac-12 school. Oh, okay. An offer from any SEC school, and you go to a game out there, you're like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. So from that perspective, it's just such a hard battle for a lot of these schools to be able to compete with the top, and the media just pumps it so much. But at the same time, if you look at the perspective of who, and here's how you find who makes decisions and how everything plays out. Follow the money. Who are the biggest contracts for producing sports, especially college in America? It's ESPN, it's Fox, NBC wants a piece, and CBS wants a piece, but it's really ESPN. And ESPN pumps their money into the SEC and the Big Ten. They have some contracts, obviously, with the ACC and the Big 12, not as much money, and they want to get a return on their investment. Where do they get a return on their investment? It's in the SEC and the Big Ten. What is their biggest product? The SEC and the Big Ten. Who are they going to promote the most? The SEC and the Big Ten. I've always said, especially the last couple of years, as I watch more and more college football, if you want to be relevant in college athletics, you have to build a gigantic fan base, because the bigger the fan base, the better the ratings. The better the ratings, the more likely you're going to get the coverage from the major networks that talk about their product. I hear people all the time, as we're in a baseball town now, right? Chargers are left. We're going to talk about them in a little bit. Phone call we got at the Fan this week. Chargers left. San Diego only has the Padres now for a major sports team in town. And people complain all the time about ESPN's coverage of baseball. Well, ESPN doesn't have a gigantic contract with baseball. They pay for Sunday Night Baseball and then a couple of maybe midweeks, barely. But that's not their product. Their product in terms of sports leagues, they don't have the NFL. They have Monday Night Football. That's it. NFL's king, so they could talk about NFL all the time. They have college sports, but their biggest professional sports league that they have is the NBA. ESPN pumps a ton of money in the NBA. They got games on all throughout the week, and they got games on the weekends. What do you think they're going to talk about on their talk shows? They're going to talk about the NBA. It's their product. They don't have as much invested in baseball. They're not going to talk about it. It's the same thing on local radio waves. What is our product here at the Fan? It's the San Diego Padres. What are we going to talk about? The San Diego Padres. Why? We want you to listen to the Padres. We pay good money to air the Padre games. We want you to listen to that. We want to get our return on our investment. We do not pay for the other local teams in town to be on our airwaves. Hence why we don't talk about a lot those teams. I mean, we'll mention them. And I'll talk Aztecs football here in a second. Follow the money if you want to see where all the decisions are made. So if you ever look at why your college team is not getting the credit, if you've ever looked at why your college program or San Diego State or some of these teams getting left behind, it's strictly on their fan base. I bring that up with TCU all the time. I mean, I went to a school that, if it wasn't for Gary Patterson probably turning around that football program, who knows how irrelevant the Frogs would be. They have had the Flutie effect twice now, and maybe 3 times, with the Rose Bowl that they won in 2010, with the Peach Bowl that they went to when they were number 3 in the country and dropped to 6 and didn't make the college football playoff. But that's no one was like, hey, look, TCU's good. And then the last Flutie effect of TCU making the college football playoff, winning a college football playoff game, and even though they got blown out in the national championship, making it to the national championship. And now people are like, oh, look, relevant. I mean, it's a small school. There's only 10,000 kids that go to TCU. People think it's a way bigger school. It's not. There's only 10,000 kids that attend TCU, and that's including their graduate programs. The living alumni base is very small. They're in Fort Worth, Texas. That's a major city in the DFW, major city in America because they're in the DFW area. I mean, everybody there is a Cowboys fan. And they still do a decent job of getting ratings, but they're still the little guy when it comes to the power programs. They don't have they don't have the gigantic fan base that Texas has, or even Texas Tech or Texas A&M. Trying to compete and get, and that's a big reason why they're not in these, bigger conferences. And there's schools that are grandfathered in. But there's something that College Game Day did yesterday that really shows, if you follow the money, that's where college athletics is going. And it was just so blatantly obvious, it was ridiculous. And when we come back, I'm going to tell you, or I'm going to play for you, what was the most damning thing I have heard on College Game Day in a long time. This is the Braden Surprenant Show. We're going to 10 o'clock. If you want to join us today, 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. Take it up to 10 on a Sunday morning in San Diego on America's America's finest city, but on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Welcome back to the Braden Surprenant Show, live and locally each every Sunday morning. Thanks for making our morning a part of yours. It was a chilly morning, frost advisory this morning. In the 30s in a lot of places in Southern California this morning. Speaking of chilly, did you see, I don't know if anybody did, I pay attention to high school football in California more than most people. I am the resident high school football show on 97 through the Fan, which we will have a Open Division Championship preview and a semifinals for all the other division preview tomorrow on America's Finest Football Show, which will air from 10 to midnight tomorrow night, as the Lincoln Hornets, the number one seed in the Open Division, will play the Cathedral Catholic Dons on Saturday at 7 o'clock at Snapdragon Stadium. Yours truly will be on the sidelines, helping coach the Cathedral Catholic Dons. So, if you have not seen any high school football yet, or if you haven't checked out Snapdragon Stadium, get your tickets and go watch some high school football on Saturday. Should be a good game between Lincoln and Cathedral. A lot of future D1 athletes competing on Saturday night. Plus, we got a lot of great games coming up on Friday night. But as I mentioned, speaking of chilly, there was a game this weekend in California, a playoff game that had snow. And the game was blanketed of snow. And there was snow on the ground for this playoff game. And it was in Big Bear, and Baldwin Park had to go up to Big Bear to take on Big Bear High School in Big Bear City, California, and play in the snow. And Baldwin Park left with a victory. They won 28-21 in the snow. There's not a lot of high school teams in California that have to play in the snow in football. Not a lot. And so when snow was in the forecast, one of the high school football accounts that I follow, a local San Diegan and a diehard Padres fan who is now up in the desert as a principal, Chris Ford, tweeted out towards the Baldwin Park head coach, snow in the forecast. Hopefully you know how to pound the rock. And Baldwin Park did that, in fact, and ended up winning 28-21. Want to get to your phone calls, 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. I'm going to pay off the tees again with college football. And it goes to, and I'm going to talk more about this in the next segment. But, you know, the narratives of like the SEC is so great and the Big Ten is so great. I look at the standings and they look like every other conference out there. Teams at the top are good. They're really good. And then there's a bunch of mid, and then there's usually 2 or 3 schools that are very bad. That's in the ACC, that's in the Big 12, that's in the Big 10, and that's in the SEC. But the 2 conferences that are the product of ESPN and the big networks are the ones that are always like, well, you know, they're so good, they beat each other up. It's because they're so good. How many times as a Pac-12 fan, for all you Pac-12 fans out there, where the Pac-12 would eat itself alive? It's like, well, it just shows how bad they are. Because they didn't have that major contract with ESPN. It wasn't their main flagship ratings getter. And all of that narrative turns into like, and it sets from the beginning with the BS AP poll that they put out before the year, before anybody has ever seen these teams play. And I'm convinced the more I see AP voters, the more I'm convinced they don't even watch, or they don't even know what they're watching for when it comes to who they pick to be the best teams in the country. And those errant picks that they have at the beginning of the year, because they see the logo and the school name, and they're like, well, you know, they were really good back in the 70s. It's just a natural bias in their minds. And it gives these schools these like fake ranked wins at the beginning of the year. And then at the end of the season, when they go through it, sometimes they count them as ranked wins, and sometimes they go like, well, that team's not good anymore. It's not a ranked win, but it really just depends on the school that they're fighting for. A perfect example of that was yesterday on College Game Day, when they're talking about Arizona State playing Kansas State, and they were doing their picks. Arizona State and Kansas State are near the top of the Big 12 standings right now. And the winner of that game was going to be in a driver's seat for an opportunity to play for a Big 12 championship game at Jerry's World, which is still a wide open contest. I mean, there are still, I think, 10 or 11 teams. There might be 10 schools left in the Big 12. There might be more out of the 16 schools in the Big 12. 10 are still eligible to make it to the Big 12 championship game, and we got 2 weeks left. These two schools have a better chance than one of the better chances than most schools. And so College Game Day's picking the game. And here's what Desmond Howard had to say about picking this game. This is College Game Day from yesterday morning.
Big 12, Arizona State, Kansas State still in the mix. They need a little help to get to the Big 12 title game.
I saw that on the rundown. I was like, why are we picking this game? I thought it was a mistake.
That might be the first one of those this season.
Yeah, I mean, but just Kansas State, I guess. Let's go Kansas State.
I mean, talk about not being prepared for your show. How are you on College Game Day and are not talking about and not thinking about all of the other schools besides the same old schools? I mean, a total lack of respect just because it's like, well, they don't have the SEC logo by their school name. They used to do the same thing with Texas and Oklahoma. Well, now they're in the SEC. It's like, oh, they're great. Even though Oklahoma's not that great this year. It's really remarkable. If you look at the Big Ten standings, they got 3 teams that are good. They got an Indiana team who I think is decent. I think they're pretty good, but they've played a very soft schedule. And then they got a pile of mid. But that pile of mid is good because they play in the Big Ten. I mean, Iowa's not that great. Iowa lost to UCLA on a Friday night a couple of weeks ago, and Iowa is one of the better teams in the Big Ten. But it's like they're in the Big Ten. They got to be good. I've watched Tennessee play almost every game this year. They're good. They're not great. They haven't looked very good against most of their opponents this season, including lousy SEC opponents. In fact, they went to Arkansas, and they lost to a team in Arkansas who got smoked by Oklahoma State, who still hasn't won a game in the Big 12. Stop trying to tell me that this conference is so much better than everybody else because it's your product. It's terrible. It's so ridiculous. It's the SEC and the Big Ten. Oh, look, they're all tied. They all have 2 losses. It's great. I mean, if you look at the SEC standings, there is a high probability that they have a 4 or 5-way tie for first place and need to go through tiebreakers to determine who goes to the SEC championship game, with all the schools having 2 losses. And for ESPN, they think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. But if it's the Big 12 that has the exact same thing, oh, well, they're just all lousy and they can't compete. It's not the same as everybody in the SEC. I'm not saying the SEC is not good, but what I'm saying is the sport has balanced out enough where the product is good, but we're still getting gaslit by the media about how much better 2 conferences are because they're the ones that are funded the most by the 2 major media outlets in sports in the United States. It's really ridiculous. 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. Mitch, Brandon, Kathy, Juan. We are coming back with your phone calls when we come back. This is the Braden Surprenant Show, live and local each every Sunday morning on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Braden Surprenant Show live and local each every Sunday morning. Talking a lot of college athletics, college football, college basketball. Big game for the Aztecs tomorrow night. They take on Gonzaga. If you got tickets to that game, come out in full force and help the boys get a dub tomorrow. It's going to be a big game for the Aztecs before they go to a tournament in Vegas, an NIL tournament that's going to be big for them as well. I want to add more to this. I mean, again, I just proving that ESPN is just fully in on the SEC. Last night is part of the NBA settlement in terms of contracts of TV negotiations, everything like that, and TNT and everything like that working out with the Warner Brothers. Bob Thompson, who reports on social media, puts from the Wall Street Journal, quote, in addition, these people said ESPN will sublicense the Big 12 Conference college football and basketball games to Warner Brothers Discovery, that it can air on TNT as well as on its Max streaming service. This is the settlement between, with the NBA going to ESPN and not sticking with TNT. So, if you want anything else that shows how much in bed ESPN is with the SEC, look no further than that latest deal. It's pretty remarkable. So again, when ESPN tells you about who are the best teams in the country and they air this BS college football playoff seeding, and you watch it on Tuesday that is highly funded by ESPN, you could talk about, well, where's the money coming from? And where's the money going? Follow the money, and you'll understand the answer of why you have said teams potentially in the college football playoff. Want to get to your phone calls, 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. Let's go with the guy that called in first. That'd be Brandon in El Cajon. Brandon, what's going on?
Hey, good morning. It was cold out here this morning.
Yeah, it was chilly this morning. Stay warm.
Yeah. Hey, there's a big show today. I think it's the thing of it's more about money than sports these days across the board. I think, it's messing up college football and especially baseball. It's just, I think they're kind of messing up a good thing. It's more about money than sports.
Well, that's definitely, it's funny you brought that up, Brandon. I was having that conversation with my buddy's mom yesterday at the bar when we were all sitting there, and she was saying the exact same thing. And she used to work at the Forum and and watch, some great athletes up close and, how different it was, before the money just got to an unreal level for a lot of athletes. But it's kind of the case. I mean, if you look at professional football all the way through youth, I mean, it's all money incentivized. And even though youth players aren't getting paid, they're trying to find ways to create the most marketing for themselves on social media so they can get recruited, so they can eventually get paid. I mean, we have made sports such an individual thing where most players for sports teams are really mercenaries that are hired. They're hired guns to help out, but they're not really fully invested in the cause, right? The cause for the team, the cause that the fans are invested in because of just being incredibly overpaid for something that is a child's game, right? I mean, it's more about entertainment than it is sports. And, as you say with a lot of, it's hard to tell these college kids not to take the money, right? When you're getting offered, if you're getting offered to do something that you are good at and you like to do, hundreds of thousands of dollars, why turn that down? But at the same time, even though the product of college athletics is great from a parity standpoint, I mean, just wait for this postseason, Brandon. I mean, you're not going to have – I mean, these bowl games are going to have nobody playing in them.
Yeah, they're destroying the beauty of the game, especially baseball. But it's the gambling and all. It's ruining sports, really, I think, unfortunately for all of us.
It's really changing the dynamic of it. And, Brandon, I appreciate the phone call, and hopefully you have a good – rest of your Sunday. Brandon brings up a good point. I mean, it takes a little bit off. I mean, I just think a lot of times, and my dad's been saying this for a handful of years now, I think a lot of these players, from high school on, I mean, even like the youth, I mean, I think a lot of players will take the win but don't necessarily want the win. I don't think they're going out there doing whatever it takes to win. I think there's other incentives to it as well, which leads to a product of, guys not going. I mean, that's what makes March Madness so much fun, was just guys are just going hard. They're playing for their lives. And I think you might still see that in March Madness, because in basketball, it's so hard to make it to the NBA. I mean, those guys are playing basketball for the final time, for a sport that they have been a part of for their entire lives. And you get that kind of passion and intensity to go out there and win. But that is, I think, slowly going by the wayside in a lot of different leagues because of some of the monetary values that you are getting out of some of these leagues. Let's get back to the phones. Kathy in Los Angeles wants to weigh in. Kathy, what's going on?
Hey, Braden. I live in Kansas City for 20 years, so sister-in-law number 2, my brother's on number 4 now, so I have to number them when I remember who did what. Got me hooked on Nebraska back in the 90s. And I used to travel for a living, so when I was up in Seattle, there was a bar where Nebraska fans hung out. Same thing in San Diego. I think there were a couple bars in San Diego. I haven't really looked into anything up here in L.A., but that's the difference between college fan bases, I think, and other sports fan bases, is they follow their team. And they're very passionate about their teams. I mean, you're a Horned Frog. You still follow and root for, Texas. So that it's just a different atmosphere and a different, way of life with college fans.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, college fans are more passionate. You have more connections to the logo, right? Because it's your school. It's a little bit different than the sports team's logo, right? The professional sports team's logo. And that's the big thing. And Kathy, I appreciate the phone call going close to the time here. And it's kind of like, almost a transition what I want to talk about to start the 9 o'clock hour. I mean, we had somebody call in to our boss here, Adam Klug, to file a complaint about all of our shows not covering the Chargers. And I think from a sports perspective, you see the passion in college athletics, because a lot of the fans in college, they went to the school. They went to the university that they root for, right? And they have this passion and the sense of belonging, and they have some skin in the game of understanding that they, at some point, and this is kind of changing right now because a lot of these, because the way it's going, but a lot of these players are living the same lives that you lived in college. Doing the same thing, taking the same classes, going through the same stuff, whereas in professional sports, it's a little bit different. You are actually physically connected. It's not like you worked for the school, but you were a part of the school. You were a part of the program. When you're as somebody that is sort of kind of part of the Padres, it's a little bit different now for me. When I was, doing the pre and post game show and being on the flagship now, it's a little bit different. But for most fans, you're not on the Padres. You feel that sense of camaraderie with the city. And that's the same thing with a lot of fans that left the Chargers when they left to LA. Was I'm not loyal to this logo. I'm not part of the organization. I was never part of the organization. It's not a school that I attended. The part that I cared about was the San Diego. That's the thing that tied me to the team. And I'm going to tell you right now, and this pisses off a lot of people, I am 100% a gatekeeper of fandom. I know people don't like that, like gatekeeping of fandom. I'm a gatekeeper of fandom. I'm not afraid to admit that. I think there should be a rhyme and reason for you to root for a team instead of just taking the easy path of, they're really good, I'm going to root for them now. I think that's kind of lame. I don't think you're fully invested or you have, and everybody says they are, but I don't think you really are. I mean, how easy it is to just be like, what, I'm just going to root for the Dodgers. Now they won. I think you have to have that connection. I root for the school I attended, the schools I attended. I support the schools that my fans, family went to, and I root for my city. And other than that, I don't have the same passion for the other places. Should 97.3 The Fan cover the Chargers? Well, one fan thought so. Had a long phone call with our boss. We'll talk about it when we come back, and we'll get back to your phone calls to the Braden Surprenant Show. Hour number 2 coming up, 97.3 The Fan. Hour number 2 in the final hour of the Braden Surprenant Show, live and local each and every Sunday morning, taking you up to 10 o'clock today. You're ready for some NFL football. Got some good games today. Have some really bad games today, too. We talked about that on the show on Friday. But we will talk about that and preview the NFL in just a little bit as we talk about the NFL from a national perspective on this show. Not necessarily a team that we cover because there are no teams to cover in town here in San Diego. And thanks again for making our morning a part of yours. I'm Braden Surprenant. We'll have the America's Finest Football Show on tomorrow, talking high school football tomorrow night at 10 o'clock. But our regularly scheduled program tomorrow as well. Andy and Elston at 10 in the morning. Before that will be Ben and Woods, and after will be Gwynn and Chris. Gwynn and Chris will be back after missing Friday, playing in the Aztec Golf Tournament on Friday afternoon. I know Ello made a birdie putt in that tournament at least once because Scraby posted it on social media. He was given the update, so we'll get the full update from the crew on how they did at the golf tournament. Don't want to get to your phone calls today, 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. We're talking about the I'm talking about the NFL and a disgruntled phone call from a local fan. And maybe you guys can weigh in on this too. But complaining that the fan, 97 through the fan, doesn't cover the Chargers, which I find hilarious from multiple angles. But I want to get back to your phone calls first, and we'll talk about that. Let's get out to New Jersey. Mitch. It's been a while, Mitch. How you doing, man?
What's happening, Brandon? Whose fault is that? I'm 100% guilty. You don't hear that often, do you?
Hey, you know what? But we've had some early London and Germany games that knocked me off the air. We had Veterans Day last weekend when I was out of town, so it's equal parts. Equal parts. What do you got for me today?
Well, I love college ball. It's sad to be coming down to an end. Same thing with high school. I follow the Southern California. I'm hoping anybody can beat them out a day. Hoping for Centennial and Bosco. You probably know more about them than I do. But one thing for sure, and I hope USC is keeping track, especially their talent and their own backyard, especially the quarterbacks. Let Juju Lewis go. He's only 6 feet tall. I mean, Matt Barkley was a 4-year starter, and his career didn't pan out. I don't think he won a championship. But Lincoln Riley is definitely overpaid, overrated. I'm hoping to get a Houston Longstreet, and I like the game that Jaden Mayava, he played a pretty good game yesterday, especially after that pick six. I'm loving it. I'm hoping San Diego State can join the new Pac-12, and that won't go away. And I'm liking the Mountain West and the Big 12. Arizona State, I like their quarterback. His name's Sam.
Sam, leave it.
Levitt. He looks good. I tell you, I thought Arizona would be better, but they've had a bad year, but they have a good wide receiver. I'm just hoping Arizona State can win it. And I'm loving it. Watch out for Old Mississippi. I thought Tennessee could do well because that's a Southern California quarterback whose brother is going to attend UCLA because USC just keeps missing. I keep talking. Thank you for taking my call. And enjoy your I know it's very, very, very too late to hear your high school basketball, football. Must be interesting, but it's definitely past my bedtime.
Yeah, 10 o'clock, Mitch. I'll hopefully the next day
time?
We'll have it'll be 10 o'clock your time, 7 o'clock our time. Mitch, I appreciate the phone call. Hopefully get you a nice recap of that on Sunday morning with the Dons taking on the Hornets. He mentioned, I don't think anybody in the country is going to beat Mater Dei. Mater Dei in Santa Ana is just doing some unprecedented things this year, even more so than usual. I mean, if you look at the ratings and the ratings that come from calpreps.com, Mater Dei has done some just insane work in the national rankings. If you look at the top 25 in high school football, Mater Dei is number 1 in the country. They have played number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 7, number 10, number 11, number 14, number 18, and the 50th best team in the country. That has been their schedule up until now. And Mater Dei is a perfect 10-0 with a 102 rating. Just to put it in perspective, the number 2 team in the country right now in high school football is Bishop Gorman. out of Las Vegas. Modern day Santa Ana beat them 31-15. I wasn't even that close. The third best team in the nation, second best team in the state of California, is St. John Bosco, which is a big rivalry in modern day. And they always say that these two teams always play each other twice. And in the playoffs, the team that won the first game loses the second game. This might be the first year where that doesn't happen, because modern day beat St. John Bosco this year. This is the number 3 team in the country, St. John Bosco. They beat them 59-14. It was 42-0 at halftime. Orange Lutheran, the 4th best team, they beat 38-14. Corona Centennial earlier in the year, which is now the 5th best team in the country, they beat them 42-25. St. Francis Academy out of Baltimore, Maryland, who usually wreaks some serious havoc across the country, modern day beat them 25-14. Sierra Canyon, 10th best team in the country. They beat them 33-13. Santa Margarita, also in their conference, 11th best team in the country. They beat them 40-18. J. Sarah, 14th best team in the country. They beat them 41-17. They went out to Kahuku in Hawaii, who was the 18th best team in the country. They beat them 38-7, and they beat the 50th best team in the country 28-6. Hasn't been a single game that has been close. Not a single game that has been close. You could say what you want about other schools throughout the high school realm and in different states. And Texas always thinks they got great high school football. They ain't beating the Trinity League schools. Remember the last time Duncanville was the number 1 team in the state of Texas right now? Remember the last time Duncanville played Modern Day? That was a couple of years ago. Modern Day beat them 42-0. I mean, it's a factory. They got kids from all over the place. And I'm not just talking all over Southern California. They got kids from all over the place going to that school. So as Mitch said, it's going to be very difficult to beat them. I don't see anybody doing it. If anybody has a chance, I guess it would be St. John Bosco, but they got smoked last time, surprisingly. But we'll see. Modern Day will play Corona Centennial this weekend in the semifinals of Division I for the Southern section. And then if they win that, they will play the winner of St. John Bosco, who takes on, forget who Bosco is playing. St. John Bosco is playing Orange Lutheran. The winner of that game will take on Modern Day. Most likely. Sorry, Mitch. That's what that's going to be about. College football, it's been great. It's been a lot of parity. We've been talking a lot about that. When we get back to your phone calls, we got one more left on this docket. 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. Let's go out to Vista, where Juan wants to weigh in. Juan, what's going on?
How's it going, Braden?
I'm doing well.
I'm just calling because I was watching the Oregon-Wisconsin game last night, and I was kind of thinking about where Dylan Gabriel could end up. And just mulling it over, I kind of came to the conclusion that it would make sense for maybe the Rams to pick him up in the first round since Matthew Stafford is getting older. Just kind of wanted to get your thoughts to see where you think he'll land in the NFL next year.
It's very difficult to say with Dylan Gabriel. I think he's got a good he's a pretty good quarterback. I think he did well at Oklahoma before. He's obviously doing well at Oregon. He is the quarterback for the number 1 team in the country right now. Although I don't really think Oregon is the number 1 team in the country. I think they've kind of skated by a couple of times. But it just depends on like where we're at in the draft and how everything lays out. I mean, I don't think he's the best quarterback in the draft, but you know, the Rams potentially drafting Dylan Gabriel later rounds, you know, and kind of have him learn under Matt Stafford a little bit. I think that's a good plan for success. That usually is the best key to success when it comes to college quarterbacks and going in the NFL. The ones that aren't thrown to the fire are usually the ones that do the most damage. And we've seen that, especially in the quarterback era that we're now out of. You know, you had Phillip Rivers under Drew Brees for a little bit, and you had Aaron Rodgers behind Brett Favre, and you had Tom Brady behind Drew Bledsoe, and you had these quarterbacks that were behind veteran quarterbacks. I mean, you could even say Drew Brees behind Doug Flutie, right? Where they got to learn a little bit and like really come into their own instead of being thrown to the fire. And you've seen that with a lot of these quarterbacks that have now had success in the NFL. And the ones that did not do that, it's taken them a while to like get to that level because it's so difficult to play quarterback in the National Football League. But in terms of teams, I mean, I think the Rams could probably get them. I mean, I'm looking at just thinking off the top of my head of teams that need quarterbacks. I mean, everybody probably needs a quarterback at this point in time. There's only a handful that don't. It's not a bad idea, one, with the Rams. I mean, you could probably start looking at, Titans maybe. I mean, Tennessee doesn't really have a quarterback answer. The Raiders don't have a quarterback answer. I don't think – I think the Patriots have a good quarterback in Drake May. I think it's going to be a while, and their offensive line isn't very good. The Browns might be in a quarterback situation now. The Saints don't really have too much at quarterback right now. You keep going down the list. I mean, there's just a lot of question marks. I mean, what are the Colts going to do with Anthony Richardson? I mean, Richardson got benched. Flacco wasn't very good, and then they had to bring Richardson back. I mean, Richardson pulls himself from games because he's tired. What quarterback does that? Jets in the chat. I mean, yeah, what are you going to do with the Jets? The Jets are miserable. Are the Jets going to keep Aaron Rodgers? I mean, they have done everything that the Jets wanted to do. I mean, the Jets have done everything Aaron Rodgers has wanted. They're 3-7. That's probably it, though, in terms of teams. I think it'd probably be his best fit would probably be the Rams, for sure. Had a gentleman call 97 through the fan this week complaining to our program director that we don't cover the Chargers. I find that to be hilarious. And he had a long conversation with him and back and forth, and he should be covering the Chargers and yada, yada, yada. And the response every time from local Chargers fans in San Diego, okay, pat yourself on the back, man. You guys are 6-3 or whatever it is. But the biggest thing with the Chargers, again, they're 6-3. I think they're okay. But if you look at the Chargers' schedule, they beat the Raiders, who are awful. The Panthers are awful. They beat the Broncos, who are like kind of up and down. That's not that, but that's like your best win right now. The Saints, awful. Browns, awful. Titans, awful. And they got the Bengals tonight. I could talk a lot of reasons of why you don't cover the Chargers in San Diego. I think the angry mob still outweighs a lot of people in town that are Charger fans. And there are a lot of people in town that still root for the Chargers. They're like closet. They like hide. And then they start to peek. They're like, you know what they are? They're like Homer Simpson coming out of the bush. And he goes back in. And then he comes back out. Goes back in when the Chargers aren't good. And then he comes back out of the bushes when they're good. And he's like, why aren't you covering us? You're not our team anymore, my guy. Big dog, go listen to LA radio if you want to listen to Chargers coverage. And the response every time is, well, they don't talk about the Chargers. Well, that's all you need to know about your NFL franchise. They don't even get talked about in their own town. So if you follow it, who has the content for them? It's got to be all podcasts. There's got to be nobody up there that talks about that team. But how about this? And we kind of talked about this on Friday. I'd like to get into it more. No, Nate, he was a Padre fan, man. There's a lot of those Charger fans out there. They're like sneaking. They're 6-3, so now everybody's like, hey, aren't you covering the ball club? It's our team. It's still our team. Still our team. No, it's not. It's not your team anymore. But you look at here's for all you Charger haters out there. People will say I'm a Chargers hater. I don't really care anymore. In fact, I can't. Having Red Zone at my house, I don't want. It's barely on because they don't do anything impressive anyway. But I can't tune into a Chargers game. I see with Red Zone, and I was talking with the two alumni president chapters of Washington State and San Diego. Very nice couple. We're friends with Matt Scraby. And, we kind of talked about the Chargers topic, and I totally forget. I've watched Red Zone for so long now that I totally forget that you only get a certain amount of games on local cable. And when the Chargers were here, it didn't matter to me. It's like I've just tuned into that game anyway, and whatever extra game is whatever extra game. But I have been watching Red Zone for so long, I forget that you guys get terrible games in town. It's like the Cowboys and, the Chargers are the two games you get. But I have not sat down and watched a Charger game since they left from start to finish. And I know people hate watch them, but for all you Charger haters, how about the fact that they got Sunday Night Football tonight against the Cincinnati Bengals, who is, despite their record, is still a pretty good team. I mean, the Bengals they're pretty decent. They have had some thrillers not go their way. They're 4-6. They're right there battling for a playoff spot. If you look at the playoff standings in the NFL, we're now in week 11. We can start kind of looking at this. The Bengals are like 2 spots on the outside looking in. They're only one game out of the final playoff spot in the AFC, behind the Broncos. So you have 2 potential playoff teams battling it out on Sunday Night Football in Los Angeles. The Chargers put the tickets for 20% off. 20% off. Could you imagine a game at Qualcomm Stadium where the Chargers are 6-3 and they're welcoming a team that is a playoff caliber team that is battling for a playoff spot? Could you imagine? The Chargers would never have to put the tickets up for sale for 20% off. The only times that they did when the teams got blacked out is when the team was lousy and nobody wanted to go, and they had that idea of moving to Los Angeles. 20% off tickets for the game tonight. That's pathetic. I didn't even know what year it is that they're in L.A. They have made no noise in that town. Nobody up there cares. And the fact that people down here are begging for coverage tells me that nobody in L.A. is talking about it anyway. I got a friend who's a diehard Cowboys fan. We're not going to talk about the Cowboys on these airwaves religiously, and why should we? And so what he does is he listens to our sister station in Dallas, 105.3 The Fan, who is the flagship for the Cowboys, to get Cowboys content all day long. That makes sense. He's not desperately asking for the local radio station here to cover it. It's a little bit different, obviously, because the Cowboys are in a different city. But it's also relatively the same because the Chargers are in a different city. And the fact that people beg us to cover that team shows me there are no other outlets out there that give them content about this team, which is also pathetic. Here's what else is pathetic about this team and this organization. It's mostly the organization, because the team itself on the field is solid. They're a solid football team at 6-3. They got a good quarterback in Herbert. They got 1,000 Horned Frogs that I like to see have success. They got some electric players. They got great uniforms. But like from an organizational standpoint of why this organization is pathetic, I have been told, and I haven't been up there for a game, so I can't fully tell you. And I really don't want to go up there for a Chargers game and spend money and give it to that organization. But I have been told by multiple people, and people that are very credible that go up there to go to games, about how laid back the game is, how so out of it the fans are. They're just kind of there for the game. Not a lot of passion. And it came to a point, and Annie said this on Friday's show. Think about this for a second. How dumb this is. It came to a point at Chargers home games where they had to stop announcing plays from the PA announcer of the other team because there was way too much cheering after he was done. They had to stop doing it. I'm talking like 5-yard run by Bo Nix, tackled by, Joey Bosa, I guess. It brings up 2nd and 10. There would be too much cheering after the 5-yard run by Bo Nix that they decided to stop announcing it in the stadium. That is ridiculous. It is ridiculous. I can't believe that's a thing. They finally flipped it back. They're like, I guess we could do it again. 20% off tickets tonight. You could get tickets. If you go on StubHub or SeatGeek, whatever it is, tickets are readily available for this game tonight in Los Angeles, a Sunday night game. The team is 6-3. I just cannot believe this organization. It's hilarious to me. And here's the thing: I'm going to look up the tickets right now on SeatGeek, and then at the same time, I'm going to get inundated with Chargers emails now. I was like, you still want to go to the game? No, I don't. You can go to the Sunday night game tonight for $47 at SoFi Stadium. And there are, the entire bowl is readily available. You could get tickets in the end zone for $190. That is absurd for an NFL game. A Sunday night football game, there are tickets readily available all over the place. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a lot of Cincinnati Bengals fans there tonight. But I guess we'll see on Sunday Night Football. So funny. You guys should cover the team. Why? We don't cover any other team in Los Angeles. Do you want us to cover the Los Angeles Kings? Or the Lakers? I'm sure there's a lot more people in town that would rather have us talk about the Lakers than the Chargers. There's a decent amount of Lakers fans in this town. We're going to talk about the Clippers? It's not our team. They're not here anymore. You're acting like the person that is still holding out hope that your ex is going to eventually care about you. It's not the case. They've moved on. They want LA. They keep trying to fight for LA. They keep trying to win over the LA fans that are not giving them the time of day. They're not coming back to you, nor do they want you to support. So I don't get it. I agree with Boogie in the chat. I'd rather talk about the Ducks of Anaheim. I'm a little bit more lenient on Anaheim teams because Anaheim's Orange County. It's not LA. It's a little bit different. They're in the same boat we are in. They don't want to be recognized with LA. And the Ducks have their AHL team here in the San Diego Gulls. I guess you could say the Clippers now, but come on. We'll find out with the San Diego Clippers. Cover the Chargers. It's funny. It's just funny. It's just funny to me. 833-288-0973. 833-288-0973. Injury news for you to get your fantasy team started. We got the injury reports when we come back. Braden Surprenant Show live and local each every Sunday morning. San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Not over yet. One of these days, this is actually going to be for the final segment. Man Overboard by Blink-182. It's our rejoiner music right now. For those on YouTube that can't hear it because of trademarks and playing and all that other fun stuff. But that song is a recurring thing on this show and on the Annie Nelson show. It is never played in the final segment. We have been close a couple of times, but it has never been played in the final segment. Before we get to the injury news, who's in, who's out, actives and inactives for the NFL, I do want to pass along what Kathy in LA just tweeted at me in terms of Charger tickets. Her employer is partners with the Chargers, and it says, "Dear colleagues," is an email they got. "On behalf of our partner, the LA Chargers," she works for UCLA Health, "join us at SoFi Stadium on Sunday to celebrate and support our active duty military and veterans this Veterans Day weekend." This is for last weekend. "Please visit the link here and use the code SALUTE to unlock an exclusive buy 3, get 1 ticket offer for the LA Chargers vs. Tennessee Titans game on November 10th. All UCLA Health personnel, as well as friends and family, are eligible. SoFi Stadium policies," and they go through other policies and stuff like that. They are just giving away tickets. I mean, that is a damning email for that organization. Damning for that organization. I mean, I understand like the Padres doing that. Maybe. Because they play 81 home games, and some of them are during the day, and some of them are against lousy opponents, and you can't go every time. But they don't have to anymore because they sell out almost every game. It's the National Football League. You play 8 home games, or 9, whatever it is now with the new schedule, 8 or 9. If you are making headway in your town as a team that is winning, and they're winning, they're 6-3. You're not just giving away tickets. Buy 3, get 1 free? Are you kidding me? That's hilarious. Hilarious. They continue to win. They're doing good things on the field. I still think they got a lot of problems as well. And most of the games they have won have not been very against teams that are very good. But come on. Come on. 833-288-0973. 833-288-0973. Let's go out to the South Bay. Kevin in Chula Vista weighs in. Kevin, what's going on?
Hey, good morning, Mr. Braden. And so just a quick comment on the team that used to be here, the Spanicites. And then I've got 3 or 4 questions on the Aztecs, if you could indulge me.
Absolutely.
Okay. It's interesting to me how there are some folks out there in San Diego that, and I appreciate the fact that they still are loyal to the Chargers. However, this expectation or thinking that somehow San Diego media especially should be covering these guys, look, if you really care about your team, give them a call up in Los Angeles and ask them about where can you find the coverage. We're living in a day of internet, blogs, God knows what else that's out there in communication. We're not held hostage anymore by just being local, so to speak. So folks, call the Chargers, explain this to them and ask them where is the coverage, because it's their town up in LA. The LA media and the Chargers are responsible for covering the team. You can get coverage up there some way, somehow. I am sure. I've tried it. It's workable. So just to get them off your back and the back of the San Diego media, I hope that they take that to heart and go call the Chargers and ask them. Enough said about that. Getting back to the Aztecs, do you think, and I'm talking about football, first question, really quick, do you think that there's been some harm done this year on the rollout of this Aztec Fast, which didn't turn out to be so fast, and they've really, I think, done a little bit of a backwards turn in terms of perception in town now, and you're looking at the attendance, which isn't good. et cetera. I'm wondering if they maybe made a boo-boo by trying to hype something that just wasn't there.
Well, I think you're trying to sell it as much as you could. I think with the really lack of time that Sean Lewis had to really put this team together and be able to do a lot of things. I honestly think Sean Lewis and company thought that they were going to be able to move the ball a lot faster up and down the field and be Aztec fast, just with what their personnel is. More than what their personnel is. I mean, their personnel is still relatively a ground and pound team from, the previous regime. I mean, that's how most of their roster is. They don't have those, they don't have receivers they don't have any receivers that can get open. Everything's covered. And every game that I go to where you can see the whole play out in the stands instead of just the centralized vision of the TV, as much as, I think Danny O'Neal will probably be a good quarterback, you have a true freshman quarterback, and you really have nothing for him to throw it to. Even with scheme, it's not really going to matter if you got nobody, you got no weapons. And then from a running perspective, they only give one guy the ball in Marquez Cooper, and I know that guy had been loyal to Sean Lewis, and he was a great running back at Kent State, and he's been a great running back this year. But they don't spread the love of the running game at all. And, they're not built to be what they want to be yet. And I think you are right on a little bit of things. I think it's going to be hard for people to kind of buy into Aztec Fast next year, even though you got to give these guys a little bit of time to flip this thing around. Maybe they were a little overzealous about, what this year was going to look like from an offensive perspective. That might burn them, and they're going to have to just fight even harder to get more fans at the game. But I didn't get to it because I ran out of time. But Kevin, I think that football team I think you should be highly concerned about that football program at San Diego State. And I honestly don't think it has anything to do with the X's and O's or who's coaching it or who's on the team. I just think in this state of college athletics where everything's going and San Diego State getting left in the dust, it's going to be hard for them to overcome a lot of the problems in college athletics. I mean, you could just look at Trey White. I mean, being able to keep Trey White's going to cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars. You can't spend that kind of money just on the defensive end, and you can't, get mad at a kid that, even though he's a local guy, getting offered that kind of cash to go play somewhere else. You can't be mad at him for taking that.
Well, point well taken, and two more things, if I may. To get back to Sean Lewis, I think that he was well-intended, no doubt about it, but there's one thing that, and this being in coaching, you basically have to bring your schemes and your playbook down to over to your talent level. And I think and it's just my guess, I want to get your take on it before I get over to Danny O'Neal and Trey White, is that basically maybe he force-fed a system into a team with such turnover, which is legitimate, 48 players plus, that just wasn't going to be able to absorb that amount of complexity this early. And point well taken on the Cooper kid. I don't know what happened to Lucky Sutton. I mean, they need a power back that can go up the middle, because a lot of times that offensive line isn't opening holes enough for Cooper. He needs a hole. And many times we saw last night, it just wasn't there, and he gets stuffed at the line of scrimmage. So you need a big back that can help out a little bit in the offensive line, hit maybe a half open hole and gain some tough yardage between the tackles. They don't do that. But having said that, quick question. So what happens with this new system of having to finance a football team every year in the tens of millions of dollars? So let's say Danny O'Neal gets good in the next year or two. So that there's going to be a Power 5 school that comes knocking, and they're going to flash a bunch of money, hypothetically, again, in front of Danny O'Neal. This is the slope that this entire system is on right now. And for your point's well taken, for programs like San Diego State that are at the end of the rung here financially, I don't see us being able to even keep up with this, because you're asking the fans now to basically finance over and above their ticket prices and all the other contributions that are required. Now you have to go out and pay millions of dollars to a bunch of 18 and 19-year-old kids, unproven, just other than TikTok hype.
Yeah, other than 24/7 sports, rankings that, have, and I trust some of those guys, but, a lot of those stars, I mean, I see at the high school level all the time with, even players on our own team where I'm like, I can't believe this guy is getting the offers that he is getting right now as I see this in front of me, for opponents that we go against and players on our own team and just what college athletics, values and what these websites, recruiting websites value, and you look at it and you're going to give these kids millions of dollars. You could say that about the big schools too, Kevin. I mean, Nico over at Tennessee, who is a California kid, has gotten a deal. I think he got like $7 million over 4 years to go be the quarterback at Tennessee. He's been okay. He hasn't even been that great. He's been okay at Tennessee. There's no guarantee that he's going to be good. But to go back to your point with, yes, if he plays well, if Danny O'Neil plays well and plays well enough to make San Diego State football really good, which is what San Diego State wants him to do. That's why they recruited him. That's why Sean Lewis brought him over when he was committed to Colorado. And that's what they think, that if he could reach the potential that they think he can be at, he is going to be offered a lot of money to go somewhere else. I mean, look at John Matier at Washington State. He is a great quarterback at Washington State. He's a big reason why they had only lost one game going into last night, why they were ranked 18 in the country. He's already getting offers from multiple schools about going to Power 5 schools for another year to make good money. And he's at a quote, like, tweener power, group of school. They're a future conference rival of San Diego State. I mean, Oregon State's head coach 2 weeks ago said it's going to take us millions of dollars to keep most of these players. And that is at a school that already beat San Diego State, that is going to be in the same conference as San Diego State in the future, that has had some Power 5 kids in their program for the last couple of years being in the Pac-12. They could barely afford it. It's not a recipe for success. That's why I look at San Diego State's football program and go, this is highly concerning for what their fan. We talked about fan bases earlier in the show. It's highly concerning for San Diego State Aztec football. And again, it really has nothing to do with the Aztecs. It's just kind of what college football is right now. But I will say this. They say, in my sources in different athletic departments, say there's 3-year contracts coming where these guys have to sign for 3 years, and then they're stuck there, and they're gonna start going pro with a lot of these rules for college athletics. I think that kind of levels the playing field a little bit for San Diego State. But until that physically happens, San Diego State is in a very rough spot to be competitive in this day and age of Division I football.
Concur, and we haven't even touched the surface of basketball yet. But I thought that the original intent, at least some of the original intent of NIL, was supposed to have been the thought that the networks were paying the colleges, universities, NCAA, these so-called billions of dollars, and that's where the money was supposed to have come from. And what has happened is that that's not true. What they've done now, and this is typically what happens when you get politicians involved, this comes dumping down to us, the individual fans. And frankly, we don't have that kind of money, nor should we. That's not what the concept of college sports was to be. Should kids get some money? Yeah, they should get some money, but you've got to have guardrails. And there's been nothing out there. There's been no institution. There's been no enforcement mechanism into any of this. This is a nightmare that's going to end badly for a lot of institutions, not just San Diego State. I'll leave you with that.
Absolutely, Kevin, and we can really dive into it more, but I appreciate the phone call. Enjoy your Sunday. We do got to take a quick break, but I mean, you sit there and you look at some recent graduates from college, right, and the young alumni is that they're asking for money to help support 18-year-old football players, 18 and 25-year-old football players. If you graduate college, you have all this money in debt because you actually had to physically pay for college, and then you leave the school, and depending on what your job is, there's not a lot of jobs out there outside of when you first graduate that are going to pay you more than six figures. There's not. There's not a lot of jobs out there for young, unless you know somebody or you got the right last name, you're not leaving college with a job in hand that's going to pay you $100,000, $150,000. So you're making under $100,000 as a recent alumni, and the schools are pestering you for money to make sure your football team is good, and you're making like $50,000, anywhere between $25,000 to like $75,000. We want you to give us money so we can make this 18-year-old a multimillionaire. I don't know how people say that's okay. I don't understand. I know it's for the entertainment and everything like that, but the guys they're already getting college for free if they want to utilize it. They are already getting stipends for their housing. They already were getting checks. But here's the thing, and this is the best. This is the honestly, one coach had said this in recruiting. The only difference between what was happening 10 years ago and what is happening now is everybody just knows how much these kids are getting as opposed to just it being under the table. So this has always been sign of the case. But the fact that it's out in the open now and trying to get fans and alumni to donate money so they could pay the kid instead of the TV money coming in to fund is what really sets me off, right? It's getting really weird. It's just ridiculous. And I've brought up the professional level, right, as a comparison. Could you imagine if the Padres had all of their players on one-year contracts, and the only way you get to keep Fernando Tatis Jr. is if the fans that already give thousands of dollars for season tickets had to donate money to the Padres to pay Fernando to stay? That would be outrageous. It might work for a year, but after like a year or two, fans are going to be like, why am I just giving you all this money that I've made? Makes no sense. Makes no sense. Actives, inactives to finish the show when we come back. Braden Surprenant Show, San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Final segment of the Braden Surprenant Show, live and local each and every Sunday morning. Let's get you that active and inactive list for the National Football League. Getting ready for some football today on NFL Sunday. Let's talk about some of the actives and inactives for your fantasy team. Last minute for you. If you're driving around, you got to try to update your team. Please drive safely and not do that on the phone. But let's get you ready for some NFL football. Sam Laporta with a shin injury is out for Detroit. Brock Wright will replace him in Detroit. Look elsewhere on the waiver wire to replace him for your fantasy team if you can. Sam Laporta out with a shin. Marshawn Lloyd, running back for Green Bay, out with an illness. He had been on track to return from the IR after ankle and hamstring woes, but now the rookie is now dealing with appendicitis and may not even be able to come back this season as a result. Jacksonville quarterback Trevor Lawrence is still out with a shoulder injury. Mac Jones will start again this week. Lawrence is aiming for a Week 13 return following the team's bye. He will be without Tank Bigsby. Travis Etienne Jr. should end up handling the majority of the carries in Jacksonville. Tank Bigsby is out. Michael Mayer, tight end for Las Vegas, is out for personal reasons. He practiced all week but has been activated from the IR. He is active, actually. Michael Mayer is active. Michael Mayer active for Las Vegas. Jamal Williams, running back for New Orleans, is out with a groin injury. Taysom Hill gets at least one more week as the Saints' number 2 running back behind Alvin Kamara. Other news for you, Devontae Adams with a wrist injury is active. Was seen practicing on Friday, leading to the assumption that he'll be fine to play on Sunday. Adams is active. Jalen Warren, the running back for Pittsburgh, is active. Najee Harris was removed from the injury report and will start. Warren will attempt to handle his share of touches. Tyler Boyd, Tennessee wide receiver, is active at receiver with a back. He had a back injury designation. He is active. Afternoon games, Dalton Kincaid is out with a knee injury. Dawson Knox will get a chance to shine. Kincaid is likely to return in Week 13 following the Bills' bye. Dalton Kincaid out. Amari Cooper is questionable for the Bills this afternoon with a wrist injury. All signs point to Cooper playing, though, in this one, so expect Cooper to play in Buffalo. Josh Reynolds is out and on the IR with a hand injury for the Broncos. Isaiah Pacheco is out on the IR with the ankle injury. He is not ready to return, so Kareem Hunt gets at least one more week of lead back duties. Harrison Butker is out, the kicker for Kansas City. He is on the IR. Spencer Schrader will handle kicking duties while Butker recovers from surgery. Noah Fant, tight end for Seattle, out with a groin injury. A.J. Barner starts in his stead. George Kittle with a hamstring injury for San Francisco is questionable. Sources are currently reporting that George Kittle is unlikely to play. Be sure to have another option at tight end at the ready just in case Kittle cannot go. But it doesn't sound like it is very optimistic for George Kittle to play. Charlie Jones, wide receiver for Cincinnati, out with a groin injury. T. Higgins was removed from the injury report and should play if you are a T. Higgins fantasy owner for the night game tonight. That is a look at the actives and inactives for your NFL Sunday. Let's talk about some of the games. Your 10 a.m. games today. The Packers are favored by 5.5 over the Bears in Chicago. That will kick off momentarily. Jaguars are at the Lions. Lions are favored by 14 this morning. Vikings are at the Titans. Vikings favored by 6 down in Tennessee. Raiders are down in Miami to take on the Dolphins. Dolphins 8-point favorites against the Raiders in the early goings. Rams, Patriots in New England. Rams 4-point favorite on the road in Foxborough, Massachusetts. Browns are at the Saints. It was almost a coin flip game. Browns are favored by 1 in the hook in New Orleans as the Browns that are 2-7 take on the 3-7 Saints. Other morning games for you. Colts are in New York to take on the Jets. Jets are favored by 4.5 in East Rutherford, New Jersey at MetLife Stadium. A 4-6 Colts team and a 3-7 Jets team. Anthony Richardson will get the start for the Indianapolis Colts today. Last of the morning slate, probably the only good game of the morning slate, Baltimore Ravens at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Ravens are favored by 3 on the road in Pittsburgh. Steelers have done really well against the Ravens in the past and have done really well against Lamar Jackson in the past. So that will be interesting to see in the morning. Falcons at Broncos in the afternoon, Seahawks at Niners, Chiefs at Bills. Night game is the Bengals and the Chargers, and tomorrow you will have Texans at Cowboys. I'm Braden Surprenant. That'll do it for the Braden Surprenant Show. We'll be back next Sunday from 8 to 10. You can catch me on Annie and Elston this week from 10 to 2. And be sure to tune into America's Finest Football Show tomorrow night at 10 o'clock, talking high school football. San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan.